Here we are, the live stream. We're here with Dr. Linda Codner and myself, Gary Robillard. We're here to talk about, before we get into that, Linda stressed me out today. We're going to be talking about stress. And this is one of those things that we all have in life, and some more than others.
Yep.
And that's okay.
Let's pile it on you, Gary.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So, a little bit of housekeeping rules.
Okay.
In your on the YouTube, there is a place for chat. So if you have any questions as we're going through on the live chat, you can just type in your questions. They'll pop up here. We'll be able to present those to Linda for her, sharing her wisdom on whatever questions you have. And then if, as you're going through, you like these videos and want to see more, click the like button, subscribe, and click on the bell, and that'll let you know when we go live each week. All right. Housekeeping's gone. Now let's dive into it. So today's topic, one of my favorites, hanging by a thread. I think we've all had that experience where we felt like, okay, there's just nothing left in the tank, or I just can't handle whatever the situation is, whether it's physical or mental or whatever. And we've reached the wall, whatever you want to call it. Like we've had it, and we go, what the heck is wrong with me? I won't use the other word, but what the heck is wrong with me? And so, Linda, let's dive into some of what are the things that get us to that point.
Yeah, well, that's pretty obvious today. We seem to be in a state of perpetual stress and unpredictability, and I think besides just everyday stressors, we're dealing with this more global, geopolitical, whatever you want to call it, circumstances, and that's adding to, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, for a lot of people, because on top of their everyday issues, we've now got added concerns about worrying about our health, worrying about our family's health, dealing with the integrity of the issue. Do we believe what's being told to us out there? Do we not believe in what we're being told? There's so many things and balls to juggle that people have landed in this place where their symptoms, physical symptoms, are becoming bigger issues because we can't handle it all.
Yeah.
That seems to be the biggest thread that seems to be weaving amongst all of us right now.
So when we get to that point, and I've been there, I think we've all been there at one time or another, some more than others, and I've had my fair share, where we just like there's nothing left. And it can, for me, it was, these were things that were totally out of my control. And usually most of them are. I mean, when we talk about control, sometimes we think we control things, but I've learned over my 63 years that the only thing I can control is what I think, say, and do, and that's about it. Everything else I may influence to a certain degree, but as far as control, that's a really something that's not really true or accurate. What you think you can control. So we have these things that are out of our control, that may be around there. We may create things because of the choices we make or the things we do, and create stress for ourselves. And I'm probably one of the worst for that. So self-inflicted stress, we'll call it. But how do we navigate around? Because this gets to our physical, right? So this can cause all sorts of stuff, this stress. And what we've seen today in the world is a lot of anger. Like I've never seen so much anger in all my life.
Yeah, I think just to backtrack a little bit, I just love those two words you mentioned already, control and choice. So let's talk about control for a second. always good to take a step back when we start feeling emotions rising up within us, to sort of look at it from a couple of perspectives. And one is this about me? Is this about somebody else's business? Or is this our omnipotent being, God, whoever you want to call it, business? So in other words, the snowfall that happened yesterday, is that our business? No,
Yeah.
that's out of our control completely. And as you mentioned, is this something that should belong to somebody else's business and I just leave it alone?
Right.
And so, so coming to choice, well, you got to choose whether you're going to interfere or not, whether you're going to offer advice unsolicited or not, to take us down the path of creating stress and tension within ourselves. We're all on our own path and journey. But this whole anger thing as well, we have to look at anger can be very motivating. Anger can put us into action. So if we think there's injustices happening, if we feel that we can make a positive um, influence, then anger can actually be a great fuel for moving us towards action. Um, so, yeah, there's a lot of anger and frustration out there because of this unpredictability and lack of alignment with our own values. And revisiting our values is a great opportunity to reassess our lifestyle and make some choices for ourselves that are within our control, in within ourselves, our families, and influencing our friends. I think that's the other thing, is people's perspective and relationship is under a lot of challenge right now, and that's a huge stressor that we haven't normally encountered um, in the general population. And this is huge, no matter where we go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if I hear you correctly, it's kind of like these stressors can do one of two things. They can either start debilitating because we're hanging on to these stressors, or they're a tipping point for change. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, because you don't want to go into complacency either. Because if you take that too far, like, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. Oh, well, this isn't my business. It can sometimes take us down a rabbit hole as well. And in and itself can become very stressful because life becomes lifeless.
Yeah.
There's, boredom, there's sluggishness, there's like, oh, well, nothing matters sort of approach. And it can be disguised as, um, can start to be diagnosed as depression when really it isn't. Same
So
with burnout, too. Burnout looks like depression.
right. So what's the difference between good and bad stress? Like, I mean, is there good and is there bad? I mean, we know there's bad stress because we can recognize that. But is there good stress, and how do we determine the difference between the two?
Right. So I would label negative stress as something that causes us a lot of angst or anxiety. Um, we start doubting ourselves. We have a reaction that we don't like. And positive stress is something that comes from our heart. We're feeling very joyful. It's kind of like when I look at yellow fuzzy ducks, that gives me a lot of joy. And I think that as not a stress, but it's very positive. A positive stress might be getting ready to go out on some event that you're really enjoying to do, or looking forward to doing. But the problem with, if you want to get into the Confucius say, although I heard Confucius say on one of these posters that he never said any of that. But anyway, the Buddhist response is trying to be in the neutral. So we don't want to have too extreme happy of stress, and we don't want to have the negative. So somewhere in the middle is where we want to lie most of the time, and coming back to a neutral place. So have we studied what good stress does as opposed to negative stress to our physical bodies, I don't think we have enough.
Okay.
Oxytocin is one of those hormones, like it elicits the birthing process, and oxytocin is also a love hormone released by our heart.
Mm,
Very interesting. But have we studied it enough? I don't think so. So,
yeah.
does that answer that question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder for those folks out here that are with us today, go ahead, please put your questions out there for us, and then we can answer them for you. But if you want to just sit quietly in the background and just listen, that's all good too. All right, so I've got a question for you. What's where do we start to deal with stress? I mean, if we can recognize how we're feeling between the good and the bad stress, where do we start in dealing with this?
I think a lot of people don't understand themselves clearly enough to know that the reaction they're either feeling or exhibiting, as in behaviors, is actually stress. So if you don't really know you're reacting with stress, how can you start to address it?
Yeah.
So the awareness of, for instance, aches and pains, muscular tension, insomnias, overreactions, uh, even boredom, eating patterns will all tell us, like if we're wanting to nibble away at those carbohydrates, chocolate, etc., that can give us an indication that it's a tipping point. For me, if I start craving chocolate, I know my plate is more than full, too busy, and I start craving chocolate. Otherwise, I can leave chocolate alone.
Well, I'm in big trouble then because I am a certified chocoholic, and yeah, okay. Well, we know where I sit, and and the thing, and I totally agree with that because I think there's a lot of times that I don't realize that I'm stressed. I'm in go mode. I've got a kind of an A personality. I'm just like I'm going to go, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to plow through it. I could have body parts falling off, and I'd still be plowing through it. So and so I don't think, and maybe this is a male versus female thing, or not versus, but the difference between sometimes because guys, remember on our last show there, we talked about how us guys usually will leave things right to the last, and we just focus. We got our mind on the ball, and we can't let go, and so I'm not, for people like myself, where you might not even recognize your stress. You're just going through the motions, and you can't figure out why you got the aches and pains and why you feel like garbage, but you're still pushing through. And it's not until some event happens, hopefully nothing serious, that you kind of like, oh, geez, maybe I better go see Dr. Linda Codner because I think I'm broken, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, well, once these short term, go get them, let's get it fixed type jobs are done, um, turning into a chronic stress, which is where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
This has been almost 2 years, and people are feeling chronically stressed. So, chronic stress looks like bigger health symptoms. So, isn't that peculiar? We're all trying to be healthier, have a good, strong immune systems, yet we all know that when we're under chronic stress or acute stressors, for instance, your acute stress could be you get the big project done as a go get 'em guy, and then the week after, you fall apart and you get sick. That's very common, isn't it?
Right, right. Yeah.
Chronic stress, of course, can look like the big conditions like cancer and diabetes and other autoimmune conditions. People don't link those back to chronic stress. And so reevaluate your whole lifestyle and how are we doing things.
And I think too, in my case, there was, I lost a few years ago in 2017, I lost my daughter in a plane crash. And it wasn't that long after that that diabetes came into my life. And that was, I mean, talk about the most stressful thing in your life, to lose a child, but not just to lose a child, not know where that child is gone. You don't have a physical body to bury. You can't really mourn properly like most people would. You don't get the closure. So there's a lot of things, and so that was probably one of the most challenging things I've ever gone through in my life. And physically, both myself and my wife have had cascade effects from that. And so I'm sure in the audience there are people that have had similar experiences, and it doesn't have to be losing a child. The emotional impact that happens with that can happen with somebody that maybe lost a job in this whole pandemic thing. And that can be the emotional, not trigger, but the emotional intensity, I think, can be just as bad at the time as somebody losing a child. Now, when we look at somebody losing a child, we think, oh, that's the worst thing. And it probably is. But at the time, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, that emotional height is probably fairly equal. I mean, it can be for the individual depending upon how they're interpreting or how they're dealing with it. Would that be accurate?
Well, for sure, yeah. It's how we choose to manage the situation. So there's the shock. So some people aren't. I've had meetings with, and they're not over the shock of it from something 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, they need an Arnica 1M to bring them out of the shock, and there could be other things too, like the underlying emotions of a lot of the stress is usually fear or guilt or anger. Those are the three main ones. So when we look at the impact of those unfinished emotions, that is what's kind of like a script running in the background, like a software program, and
Yeah.
it's very draining because your body is using a lot of energy to feed that program. It's like having a lot of windows open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same analogy, identically. So, and seeing it in our kids, that I think is a stress for a lot of parents these days. Kids don't know that's what they're experiencing, and it can look like ADD. It can look like insomnia is an obvious one, indigestion, not wanting to go or participate in things. There's so many different levels of them expressing they're unable to cope. That's
Right.
another C word. So we talked about control, we talked about choice. Now we're going to talk about a little about coping, and how do we start to instill good skills in our children or each other when we finally have realized that we're just under stress. The unpredictability, the unknown that's coming, and how do we start to not go back to normal? How do we adjust and refine what we're doing today in the circumstances? That's how we got to look at it. It's
Okay.
not a fix. It's how are we working with it? Mm-hmm.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So let's talk about, for the last part of this, let's talk about what we can do as individuals. Doesn't matter what stressors we're under. It can be anything. It can be the loss of a loved one. It could be the stress and anger of losing a job, or maybe it's the job environment, because I've talked to people about that. So there's a lot of different sources to this stress and what have you. What can we do to start working on it? Like, you've got me on these little yellow pills. I don't know what it's like. It's like the Matrix. Do you want the blue pill, Gary, or do you want the red pill? It's so it's like, okay, I'll take the pill, and it does help. But and thank goodness I've got you to be able to say, and you can say, oh, Gary, you're like stressed out. I can see you just about twitching a little bit, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, there are stuff that you can do to kind of calm you down right now. That's not the fix. It's just to get you calmed down. And then it's like, okay, what do we do from a supplement supplement standpoint. And then there's other things like you've talked about mindfulness. You've talked about, so let's talk about some of these things that we should be looking at and maybe coming to you to get some advice on that can help us.
Sure. And I'll rip my hair out about this mindfulness and self care stuff because that's kind of like, oh my God, it's kind of a lifestyle overhaul and increasing one's awareness. So if there's any word that I can bring to everyone's attention today too is awareness. What are we doing? How are we doing it? And what can we change? And uh, so running to pharmaceuticals, it was always annoying to me when I was dispensing pharmaceuticals that medications that were used to help the nervous system were not really quick fixes because they would often take time to kick in. But I didn't like reading up on them and hearing that the pharmacological action of these are unknown.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, for those who don't know, Linda's not just a naturopathic doctor; she's also a pharmacist. And I've my wife was an RN, and I remember those CPS books. That, these, and you read, oh, this is what it can do for you, and then here's all the effects, and it's like page after page. You go, well, I don't want to know if I want to take that, right? It's and so I can see that dilemma of just giving pharmaceuticals just willy-nilly kind of thing. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I think there's a time and place for everything. However, I like people to exhaust non-addictive, non-conflictual with other medications or other things you're hoping to achieve with a more natural approach. And there's lots of good things from L-theanine to GABA to St. John's wort to magnesium, passion flower, oats, many things to
Oats?
oats, Avena sativa, exactly. So oatmeal is actually very calming.
Huh.
And an oatmeal bath will calm your skin. So there's
Okay,
many.
that's all news to me.
There you go. But I get a little alarmed when people jump on the antidepressant chemical bandwagon straight away without really analyzing and getting supportive help around the other issues that brought it to being. And also, very important is there are studies available to say that once you take a chemical that adjusts your brain chemistry, it may never reboot back to where it was, even
And,
after you discontinue those medications.
and
So
I
that,
can, and I can attest to that because I've got some kids in my family who struggle with depression. I have or have dealt with OCD, and I know that because you'll if you remember when you were so-called normal, you're up here, and then you go on the drugs and you're down here. You hit something in your life, knocks you down. And do you ever get back to normal? I have found my experience only, so I can't attest to anybody else. But for us, you never get back to what we used to call in the beginning normal. It's kind of like taking these steps, and some of them are you trip down a couple of steps, and you maybe get back half a step, but you never get all the way back. And that's been an interesting stuff. So even if you've had depression because of not maybe a genetic, so-called genetic or what have you, but maybe it's a situational thing that's caused your depression, what you take, and I'm not saying don't go on pharmaceuticals because at the time that may be the only thing that gets you through. However, I have found for me that I wanted off that stuff and was able to do so, and I'm on natural stuff that manages it, and I feel great, and so I would never personally go back. But I know some people who are like I've had children who were just so bad that they had to be on it just to band-aid them through the crisis, right?
yeah. And, people frequently don't take the right thing for them
Mm,
in a natural perspective, or they don't take enough of a particular dosage. And if
right.
they're getting to the upper end of a dosage, maybe that isn't working for you. So maybe use a combination of some sort. That's what I like to individually help people with when they come
Right.
in to see me, is just narrow that down for them and get some other lifestyle and skills in place so that they can also get a quick fix. So we were talking a little bit about uh, quick fixes at different points in our programs. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like there's no quick fix, but in anxiety, and we find that breath relaxation response definitely kicks in with a nice, easy in breath, but more importantly, is a long exhalation. So that is what's going to bring about the relaxation response. There's also palm cupping. So you would just hold your hands over your eye sockets and exert a small amount of pressure and for 10 seconds, and that will also elicit the relaxation response. So also people using aromatherapy, if they
Mm.
associate a nice fragrance or an essential oil with relaxation, have it in the car, have it in your purse, briefcase, wherever. That does work, and it's a short-term quick fix. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for those things, on the physicalities, and you've got to make sure you're eating well and you have enough hydration. That makes a big difference for handling stress. Many people become dehydrated because they're so distracted and busy or depressed, that they're not looking after themselves in just basic ways.
Mm-hmm.
Depression, I find, it always works. Like chronic depression, what's helpful is talking out the problem with someone that you trust and feel safe with, and exercise. I've
Yeah.
never seen anything turn people around more quickly than getting into an exercise routine, ideally outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. I can attest to that. The two things that probably work well for me are is the breathing part of it. So I've done breathing, I've done meditation,
Yeah,
and exercise, and I would say all three work. I've The exercise I have to do every day. The breathing, when I do the breathing, it does calm you down. It just calms you down. And same with the meditation. So I attest to using those. The hard part is getting your head in the framework you're starting. Don't try to do it all at once, and you'd probably agree. Don't do it all at once. Pick one. And breathing probably is the quickest and easiest because you can do it anytime, anywhere. You can do there, and there's lots of different types. There's the box breathing that the U.S. Marines use, where four 8 in, hold 8, out 8, hold 8, and you just kind of go around. That's a quick one, but there's lots of other ones like the Wim Hof method. There's lots of different ones. You find one that works for you. It's like meditation. I tried a slew of different types of meditation and finally found one that worked for me, but I went through a lot. I even had a personal trainer, and it was great, but it didn't stick. And so you have to kind of hunt around to find something that matches your personality and that sort of stuff. Would you agree with that, Linda?
yeah, Gary. And the other thing is, are you doing it? We know all these techniques, but nobody does them.
No.
Like, you got to find a time, place, and even if you get in the car and you're holding the steering wheel and you have the little, sticky note on the dashboard, when you're at a stop sign, just do a few long, easy exhalations, not in breath, exhalation.
Exhalations. Yeah.
And so, it all comes down to doing the stuff that we know can help us.
And I think the biggest thing is setting up a routine or a ritual for yourself when you do it. Like if you get up in the morning, it's like brushing your teeth. You get up, you brush your teeth, you comb your hair, maybe you have the shower first. Whatever your routine is, add it to your routine. Figure out when you can add that to your routine. It's kind of like when Linda sends me home with this pharmacy in a bag. Um,
Not really.
well, you should see my cupboard. Anyways, and she sends me home with this stuff, and I go, okay, when do I take what? And I got to kind of fit it into my regime here, and usually it's when I'm eating. So If it's outside of the eating, you can count on me forgetting to take it. I'll guarantee you. But if I get into, okay, before I have the meal, I'm going to take this 2 pounds of pills, and
Example, I'm not
I'm
adding
kidding.
stress to your life. I'm adding stress to your life instead of taking it away. Good grief. Oh my God.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
never thought of that. That's right. Stress from taking pills that will help you
And eating properly.
and eating proper.
Writing it down. That's what you're supposed to be doing right now. But the other thing I find these days that helps families is having a place in the house that is the quiet zone. And quiet zone, relaxation zone, serious conversations or fun conversations can go on in this quiet zone. And I think creating your own little ceremonial ritual temple place in your house is super important to uh, offering this opportunity for people to check in.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
And then you off your problems, your situation, discuss solutions. I think that's where we're at today.
Yeah. Okay.
Done.
Cool. Well, it looks like we're out of time, but for those of you who have questions that didn't put up, but there's a comments place on this particular. This will be up live for a video. You can go add comments. I just haven't trained Linda to read the comments yet, but I look at them, and so and then I can pass them on to her.
You're adding stress to my life.
Yeah, I'm just trying to share the love.
I love
Um,
you.
so thank you everyone for showing again. If you like this type of a format and the information that's coming out, please subscribe and like and that sort of stuff. So when it comes to, just as a wrap up here, we have a lot of things that can bring us to feeling like we're at the end of our rope. How do we deal with those? I guess, like Linda said, being aware is probably the first step, being aware of what the heck is going on. And sometimes that's hard. I know for me, sometimes I'm in the thick of things and I can't even think of being aware. But do the breath, and that will calm you down enough to maybe figure out where you're at and what you need to do. And
Take a step back for
step
sure.
back. Yeah, absolutely. And and then then we can do something with that. And my go to is when I get that way and I just don't know where to turn. I text Linda and say, can you fit me in? So I can, because we don't. It's not like a for me. It's not like going to a doctor. It's somebody who's looking at me holistically, not just, here, take these supplements. She's done the pharmacy stuff before, and that's why she's got into natural medicine, is because there was missing stuff. There was missing parts of that, and that's the human, being able to actually talk things through and understand what's going on, because then you can actually treat. And sometimes it's not even giving me anything. It's go and breathe, Gary. Go and get on a regular basis of meditating, right?
Yes, and talking and explaining how you're feeling and how it's tying into your physical symptoms.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, let's wrap this up. Linda, thank you so much for all this information. And again, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. We will read them and respond to them. And thank you for your time, and look forward to our next live event next week. And again, thank you so much for giving up in your day. Linda, any last words?
I think we're going to talk about the time change and how that impacts us physically next week. So we're going to be going to the dark side. Have a happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah,
That's a
happy Halloween. Dark Side. That'll be a Star Wars theme next week. Just kidding. Anyways, you guys have yourself a great rest of your day. Bye for now.